Whether we should work towards that direction, I would say yes, definitely. That's the answer. So we need to first of all analyze the science and technology policy structures. It's mostly a self-acclamation, a self kind of motivation to be part of this grouping.
When I was thinking about global TA, I was thinking about is it possible to achieve fair global policies when national interests, needs, and context are so different? I'm thinking about, for example, smaller countries versus large economies, for example.
So whether it's possible or not, time will show. But whether we should work towards that direction, I would say yes, definitely. That's the answer. So if you work towards it, then we will have the possibility. If you don't work towards that, then we'll never have this possibility. So that's the way I see it. The UN system was built upon that premise. The premise that both big and small, strong and weak, everyone can work together towards the same goal and the same aim. And as time goes by with all these global problems, what we call in Europe the grand challenges of our life, we see that they all have the same problems, and the solutions are really more or less the same for every country. It is true, though, that when we started that global TA network, the most obvious members that they were active and they wanted to be really part of it, and they had also the possibility and the resources to work in this area were, of course, the stronger countries, the stronger economies, emerging economies of the world. So Corona has been a kind of gave us a very fast plateau of activity for 2020. So we didn't have the chance to develop as much as we'd like to, but we still actually with the members are the main, the usual suspects, let's say. So it's the European Union, it's North America, it's China, it's India, it's Australia. We're working now with our South African colleagues. I've talked actually with some countries like, I don't know, Vietnam, like Namibia, countries that they are moving. They would like to move a lot towards science and technology development, but they yet do not have the resources to go as far as they would like. And they usually have the policy structures to allow for a really active global TA activity. That is usually the problem that we have with, let's say, weaker economy. The political structures, let's say, are not there. You cannot usually identify what is actually the policy, the structure that would allow someone to do a TA within that network. So there is a lot of inner work to be done there. And that's why we're also now working also with a UN a system towards a capacity building, let's say, activity in the TA.
When you say capacity building, what do you mean by that?
So we need to first of all analyze the policy structures in account, the science and technology policy structures, to be exact, and to identify, let's say, strengths and weaknesses, and identify where TA could happen, what areas that would be of particular interest in the country for TA, and who should do and with what resources, let's say, TA, and then who can also bring in some kind of TA training, let's say, from basically the experiences of a TA, not only that we have in Europe, but in other countries, and actually that they share more, let's say, the development trajectory of some of these countries. Like, for example, our colleagues in India or China, and they can share more actually with some countries about how they, let's say, integrate TA into the development trajectory, and how TA has helped their development trajectory. So that is what we're doing at the moment. We are starting a project actually with the UN, the UNCSTD, the Committee of Science and Technology for Development, that's in Geneva. They are under the how they call the plenary in the New York, and their role actually is to identify science and technology areas that can help developing countries. And their role is also to do what we would call technology assessments. but they haven't really activated that role so far. So now that we have created the global TA network, they also found, let's say, a group that can really work with them directly for this type of, let's say, aims that they had to start with. So now we will start a project quite soon, actually, in 21. We'll start a project with what we call TA capacity building in Africa. And we will take 3 countries as basically targets for this capacity building. That's going to be like a pilot work for the UN and for us. And we're at the moment, I believe it's South Africa. It's definitely on board, and almost certainly Namibia. And we're thinking the 3rd country might be Kenya, or I think there are still discussions there which countries can be part of it. So we will try to apply this idea, let's say, in African countries very soon.
How did you choose those countries? Were there certain criteria that you needed?
The UN committee chose them, and there I believe, okay, there was a lot of parameters that they're not actually maybe the same parameters that we have when it comes to the UN system. So one obvious parameter is that the country itself must want to be part of it. It might seem obvious, but it's not actually so obvious. Because there are different reasons why a country would like to be part of such a kind of pilot study, but definitely they need to also provide their own resources for that. Not a lot, but definitely resources, and most definitely a will to change, basically a will to restructure their science and technology policy. South Africa was a kind of perhaps an obvious candidate, but they had a strong will, from what I know, because South Africa is the local, let's say, science and technology superpower in Africa. There's a long tradition of science and technology, let's say, work development, and they're quite advanced compared to many other countries actually in Africa. But also there are countries that have a particular interest. Also, they have very significant development in certain areas, at least, like Kenya and Namibia. Also, they would like to be part of it. I would say it's mostly let's say a self acclamation, a self kind of motivation to be part of this grouping. That is the most significant parameter here.